Kitco News special coverage of the Xplor convention is brought to you by Radisson Mining.
Hello, welcome to Kitco News. My name is Niels Christensen. We're at the Xplor Mining Conference in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Joining me today is Belinda Labatte, CEO and President of Lomiko Metals.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. We talked to you in Quebec just before the summer.
You did indeed. It was in Quebec City, yes.
It's fascinating because Quebec is not known for critical metals. Mm-hmm. I think that is very quickly changing. How has the summer been for Lomiko Metals? Obviously you started an exploration program. You're, drilling for graphite. You have an early stage lithium project. What's been going on with your company?
Yeah, I think you're right. Critical minerals and the entire spectrum of developing that into a domestic EV supply chain is new. And although there have been companies that existed for a number of years here, companies that are peers to Lomiko that are in natural flake graphite, it's really right now that it's taking off. And that's because we see this absolute trend of anode growth, 30% per year, if not more. And natural flake graphite is 95% of that anode. We love Quebec. We think there's a lot of opportunity there. You'll find the largest conglomeration of natural flake graphite deposits in Quebec and all of North America. And you're right, we came in just about a year ago as a new team. And one of the first things we wanted to do was to look at the resource and get a much better understanding of the geometry of that resource, the depth. So we have about 40 million tons of inferred material, just over 20 million in indicated. So the drill program objective is to convert inferred into measured and indicated for a PFS study. So 13,000 meters were drilled, and we completed that program in September, and results are now coming out.
I guess, what do they look like? And I should preface it, I have no idea anything about graphite mining. Are they what you expected? How have the early assays looked like?
The project is situated in the Grenville Graphite Belt. So that extends from Ontario all the way through Labrador. It's thousands of kilometers long. We're situated in really the middle of that. Has been known to have strong graphite qualities, and what we're seeing is that we've had about a 4% grade in our PEA NI 43-101 technical report, and the early assays that we're seeing, we've issued assay results as they come through the labs. We're showing 10, 11, up to 14% graphite grade in the assay results that we have, and that is very positive because the intercepts are also not short, in some cases up to 100 meters, so nice continuity. And I think what's also interesting is that the EV deposit, which is one of the two and has that higher grade in the NI 43-101 technical report, we're seeing graphite below the marble contact, and that had not been drilled in the past. And to see some of that manifest itself is showing that there's some potential there that was not known before.
How does so you have your deposit is sort of exceeding expectations. How has it been talking to investors and getting capital? It's been a difficult market, but it's also I'm sort of wondering the conversations around the need for green energy and battery power, battery storage, and all of this stuff. How are investors receptive to what you're doing?
I think we were just talking about this today. My team and I, we were talking about how in the last 11 months we can see that there's still a lot of learning that's being done. So a lot of information gathering, trying to understand what does the dynamics look like from just graphite processing to get to the flotation concentrate, and then what happens to the transformation stage. So there's a lot of questions out there about it. And I do think that people are very quickly grasping how important the opportunity is to invest in the raw natural resources and to understand the answers to those questions, because without natural flake graphite in North America, we really can't service all these battery manufacturing plants that are opening. There's over 700 gigawatts of capacity opening across North America. Huge, I'd say there's probably, 8 to 10 plants that I've seen on a map. And that raw material needs to come from somewhere. And so very quickly, investors have to look at that whole market. And graphite has many uses. It's not just used in anode. It has traditional uses based upon its flake distribution. So it behaves differently. The metallurgy is important. And we've done some testing on metallurgy, and we're happy with what we've seen that can show it can be purified to battery-grade material. But you're right, investors are learning. I think they're going to learn quickly. I feel like it's a bit of an awkward time in the market, but we will get there.
Because, they're a major component to batteries, but it seems like lithium sort of gets all the headlines. And we've compared lithium and graphite prices. I mean, lithium has sort of skyrocketed. So how do you raise that awareness? Has it been more difficult than you thought?
We've been doing a lot of information. Let me rephrase that to say that there's a lot of people that are coming to us with questions. We definitely take the time. Sometimes we consider it like a teach-in. And we have to do that work. And we also know that to bring in meaningful capital into the upstream critical minerals space, that capital is going to do its due diligence. And so we have to be a part of that process and commit. And every day we're meeting with new investors, some that are very much interested in an energy transition story. So they come from traditional oil and gas and they're shifting. So it's a very dynamic space. And then I guess the second thing I will add is now that a Canadian critical mineral is considered domestic from the US point of view, it's opening up avenues of new capital from US grants and other areas where normally they wouldn't invest in Canadian companies. Now we can look into that.
So, 3 years ago, to talk about graphite in Quebec would have been very difficult 3 years ago. It's like I said, it's quickly shifted. Quebec has always been known as this gold, precious metals jurisdiction. And now it is quickly shifting to this importance of critical metals. What does the mining sector in Quebec look like in the next 20 years? Will we see a graphite mine in sustainable production?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm sure you can surmise, we don't even have 20 years. We have a window now. We have to reduce our greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030, be net zero by 2050. None of that can happen. No renewable resources and renewable energy hubs can happen without these critical minerals. So what I see in Quebec is an integrated energy supply system. I think that we're going to see much more collaboration and commitment to feed into the domestic market. In the short term, in the next 3 to 5 years, there might still be, some importation and movement of the product outside of Quebec. But the reality is that most of these projects are still 2, and in our case, 5 years away from full production, assuming we get through all the permitting in a very timely way and there's capital to support us. So in that time, I think that this integrated energy supply system, all the way from exploration to processing, second transformation, building the battery, it's going to become very localized. And I think that's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for young people who, that's what I keep trying to tell the young people. This is a great industry.
Okay, so we talk about the green energy transition. It is important. It's not going away. However, we're having these discussions in the middle of an energy crisis. Like Europe is burning they're pretty much burning everything they can to generate electricity to stay warm. Like they have these discussions actually hurt because of the energy crisis? Like, when you're in a crisis, you just, hunker down and do what you need to do to get the job done. And I'm sort of wondering if this crisis has impeded the progress of green energy, and what does that mean for building batteries? What does that mean for building the infrastructure for green energy?
And I would say it's fully supportive of an energy transition, because it's essentially saying that relying on one source, whether it's a material or a customer, for your energy is a bad idea. And we have historically gone to where the energy sources are easily accessible and the least expensive. So what I think we are seeing now is that energy resilience, relying on a domestic approach, is so important. And it's not going to be pipelines. It's going to be moving into the renewables and critical minerals. And I think the second point is that, as a pragmatic person, the capital has to come from somewhere to develop this energy transition that we all want. And it is simply not very available from the investor base that currently exists. So I think we're going to see much more vertical integration and upstream investment from strategics. And I think we're going to see, ideally, some verticals developing from traditional fossil fuel companies, whether they're in met coal or oil and gas, and taking some of that cash flow and moving it into critical minerals as an alternate source of energy, in the same way that Shell had seen this coming a decade ago.
What kind of role does Quebec play in that? What kind of you talk about mineralization. It's exceeded your expectations. I guess how much graphite is needed, and how much graphite does Quebec have? Can the graphite in Quebec meet the demand needs that are coming down the pipe?
We had done that math because Quebec set a more ambitious goal than the rest of Canada. They want 1.5 million EVs on the road by 2030, I believe it was. And when you look at that math, they're going to need about 300,000 tons per year of natural flake graphite, call it about half of that in anode materials. So that would be the SPG. We could provide, with our mine life, all other things being equal, about 30% of that demand. So there's a lot of graphite needed. In the United States, it would be about 10% of the demand. Worldwide, that deficit of natural flake graphite by 2040 is projected to be negative 8 million tons.
Wow.
So, if you look at what we're able to produce in a year, 100,000 tons, and other might be going up, 200 to 300,000 tons a year. But when you're looking at negative 8 million, it's a big number, and we simply need more mines to come online to service that demand.
Because I guess one of the difficulties with critical minerals in the past has been these peaks and valleys. Demand has been really, really high. Production comes online, and then overproduction, somebody floods the market, and the prices absolutely collapse. Is demand so great right now that peaks and valleys isn't really relevant anymore? China is a big part of this graphite market.
Mm-hmm.
Is there fear that they just they just come in and flood the market? I guess how do we deal with the volatility in critical metals?
Well, I think we also have to remember that China has been serving the global market for natural flake graphite up until today. So going back to what you were saying before, right now about 1.4 million tons of supply is out there, and it meets demand perfectly. And that's because it can all go through China, but they're running out of resources, and they are also importing from Mozambique and Madagascar and other areas. Pakistan, India, Brazil are all suppliers of natural flake graphite. But that is a system that is no longer in place for the future. We're developing a new system, so we have nothing to compare it to. So we can't really say this is going to flood the market or not, because there's all these battery manufacturing plants opening that didn't exist before. So, I think what's really going to be interesting is how many people are going to be driving EVs and what's the rate of growth going to be of that. I think that people are going to choose EVs over an internal combustion engine. And I think the younger generation, they're going to be driving less cars to begin with. So I think you're going to see a growth rate that's very high. I think the 30% is reasonable, but I don't know if you're going to see so much turbulence as you would expect, because I think that there's enough to sustain the vehicle that we're all driving today, and we're going to see that transition work itself through the system. And because there's just not enough graphite or lithium or cobalt out there, you're just going to be waiting longer to get your car.
We've talked a lot about graphite.
Yes.
You do also have a lithium project, but I'm sort of wondering, like, how do they compare in that, like I said, lithium does get a lot of headlines. How is that project developing for you guys?
It does, and there is lithium available, hard rock brine around the world. Nemaska Lithium Belt is one such place, and that's where our project is. We're in the north end of that, and we're very early stage, but I love that because there's a lot of blue sky potential, and we are doing surface and soil sampling over a 2.5 kilometer strike there, right along a showing from another property just south of us. And once those results come out, we can determine where and how we do further drilling on that prospect. So we are looking at lithium, tantalum, cesium showings. I cannot say because no assays have come out yet for that work, but it certainly is blue sky potential for our investors as we develop that project.
Which one do you think is going to have more importance going forward, lithium or graphite?
Oh, I love those black and white questions. I came into this because I like all 31 critical minerals in Canada. So let me just start there. Okay. I think that because they have utility. And so I think it's really about, it's almost like real estate, it's location, location, location. Where are you? What do you have? What's the situation for you to be able to produce that mineral in that area? And so I like graphite because we've staked claims around that area. We understand the community challenges and their points of view on developing there. So that gives us some really good information to work from. And I think you'd have to make the same assessment with lithium. For us, it's just a question that one is more advanced stage than the other.
Belinda, thank you very much for your time. It's really interesting to have conversations about this growing critical metal sector in Quebec. And I thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
I had a good time sharing thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Kitco News. Stay tuned for more coverage from the Xplor Mining Conference in Montreal, Quebec.
Kitco News special coverage of the Xplor Convention is brought to you by Radisson Mining.